So the best of order, guys, best of orders. This is Janis, some of you have not met her. What we've got tonight is friends and family. A lot of the people here obviously knew our mothers and fathers and cousins and all that kind of stuff. We didn't all ken each other though. As the family's grown and people have moved apart and stuff like that, my cousins, grandsons and granddaughters I didn't know and all that kind of stuff. So tonight was a wee idea for that. Janis is over, she loves Scotland. I stayed with Janis for a few weeks in Australia 5-6 years ago. And she was doing this at the time, as well as writing a book. She was doing the family history of the Arthurs. So this is a wee PowerPoint presentation, and I'm holding that mic far too near it. She's made a wee PowerPoint. She's very fucking nervous, right? So please, 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 boo when you think she's not doing well, and help her to move on, right?
Okay, so is this working? Is this working?
Yeah.
Is this working? So please bear with me because I am really fucking nervous. Because I've never done this before. So I started, as some of you know, I was looking for my family when I first came to Scotland when I was 17. And there was no social media, none. So I was with some friends, we looked in the white pages, there were a couple of Arthurs, I rang up. There was no answering machine then, so I couldn't find anybody.
Should have checked the police station.
That's coming.
Right. I can tell you if any of you came to Australia, it was the same thing. So, I was really upset. But then I started the journey. All I knew was, when I was little, I said to my dad, tell me, because he was obviously born here, tell me about our family in Scotland. He said, typical Arthur. What's there to tell, Janis? There's something to tell. All I know is we're descended from the Dukes of Argyll. I've actually found that to be true. We are. Now the Dukes of Argyll...
You need to hold the mic nearer your... Yeah.
The Dukes of Argyll So we're descended, that sounds better, doesn't it? Yeah. So we are descended from the Dukes of Argyll, but also a lot of others. All I could do for tonight, as I said to John, it's like an iceberg. All I've got for tonight is the little tip. There's 7/8 that I couldn't do tonight because we'd be here for a few centuries. I found so much out. The lines that you'll see, I was actually telling a couple of my cousins before. My eldest son said, oh, they probably screwed other people, so it's not our line. and my answer was, well, they probably did, but all I can do is go through the marriage line, births, deaths and marriages, peerage, all of that. And that's what I've done. So I've only picked these 5 to do, just to give you an idea of where we're coming from. So but if anybody's interested, you can let John know and I can give you any other information because I've got so much at home. It's just, well, this is home, isn't it? So much back in Australia. So here we start. My journey to find my roots ancestrally. Okay? So a lot of you would know that the Arthur clan is one of the oldest in Scotland.
You need to hold the mic up a wee bit.
Particularly in, told you I'm doing this, particularly in Argyll. And the Campbells and the Arthurs ended up amalgamating because the Arthurs owned a lot of land. Intermarriage, the Arthurs lost their chief, and then it was only, and that was in the 18th century. So it was only in 2002 that the new Arthur clan chief lived in America. So I'm sure.
It could be James, eh?
So, but we were one of the strongest clans in Scotland back then. So It was during the reign of that, and I'll try and get through this quickly just to give you a bit of an idea of the history. That's where I was saying, where the Campbells, and it was under King Alexander III of Scotland, the Campbells and MacArthurs amalgamated. So that's actually what happened. And the MacArthurs had a lot more land than the Campbells as well. So Robert, the Bruce, he actually gave the Arthurs a lot more land. I mean, all this, if you want, John can send to you. I just don't want to bore you with it all. He actually gave the Arthurs a lot more land. So, but the motto was of the Arthurs, and you will all love this, the Arthurs answer to nobody.
But the king.
But the king, yeah. So, okay, so this is, I was only able to go back, and I think young Alex had this done too, I believe, to Samuel Arthur. And he lived at 7 the Venice. And that was, he was 1762 to 1800. I've gone back a lot further with other relatives, but this is just the Arthurs. He had another son, Samuel, and then the Martins went on from there. Martin after Martin after Martin. And let me tell you how hard it was for me to differentiate. I'll come back. I just wanted to show you how the lines work. So I'll come back to them. So this is your line, okay? This is how it works. My granddad, 1867 to 1938. He was your great-granddad or your great-great-granddad, on the case of the young ones, your great-great-great-granddad, okay? He was married to a lady called Anne Dewar. Anne disappeared. I've tried to find her, I don't know what happened to her. Was she murdered? Did she piss off to America or Congress? She's disappeared. There's no record at all whatsoever. Nothing. So he was living in Lady Stairs Close. And that's where my grandmother, Anne English Thompson, was living. And that's where he met my grandmother. So your grandmother was Anne Dewar. Mine was Anne English Thompson.
Same father.
My grandmother. Your grandmother was Anne Dewar. Your grandfather was Martin Arthur. And Anne English was my granddad. Ask me questions, please, because it took me bloody years to figure this out. So I want you to ask me if you don't get it. Because I'm not, you know, John knows how long it took me to work all this, from the births, deaths, marriages and everything. So all these people you will recognise under, and John and I called Martin Hatch because he lost his eye in the First World War. So to differentiate between all the Martins, we called Martin, who married Elizabeth Alice Taylor, Patch, because there's just so many Martins. So these are all your family underneath. So do you recognise any of those or not?
You need
Martin, James, Alex, Jean, Janet, Jenny, Margaret, Sophia, known as Vi, and Helen, William, Mary Ann and Alice. Do you recognise them? Yeah? Okay. So that's your line. My line is James, Anne, Martin, Janet and my dad Rob. What actually happened when Angie was shot through, she left a 5-year-old son with his father, Martin Arthur, 1867, my granddad. So my grandmother brought him up. So he was 5, and then they had 5 kids of their own. When Granddad went to the First World War, he got gassed, and his lungs were ratchet. So when he came back to Edinburgh, the doctor said, you need to immigrate to Victoria, where it's a dry climate in Australia, because you'll be dead here with madness. So Granddad and Anne English Thompson, my grandmother, immigrated, and they took the 5 kids. But your granddad, Patch, stayed, because he was in his 20s. He didn't want to go, so he stayed. So that's please ask me questions, because it is confusing. I know it is confusing because it's, you know. So has anybody got any questions about this? No? 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 So thanks to Lorna. Lorna sent me this. Lorna actually sent me this photo, and there's one missing. Is that right, Lorna?
More than one.
More than one. Lorna sent me that so I could keep it. Okay. I mean, Lorna was great because I didn't have any photos, so she sent me that. Okay. Now, just while I'm on this, my Aunt Nettie came here looking for her brother Martin Arthur with the patch, right? And he died. But she met Alexander, her nephew. So you're all related to these people, is that right? Yeah. So I only actually met Alexander, which was good. It wasn't like meeting my brother, but she met him. So this goes back to where I know young Alex was when he did, you know, Who You Are or something. Samuel was born probably in Ireland. I hate to tell you all, possibly in Ireland. And he was a tanner. And tanners were that they had to soak the hides in stale Europe to soften it. So you can imagine what sort of job that was. Then his son Samuel was a hawker and coalmonger, and he sold, it was called Delft, that goes around the chimneys. And he used to go, he lived at 7 the Vennel, and he went up and down the Vennel, which is now, as you know, it's got long steps. But back then it was mud. And there was lots of deaths with animals and people because the carts just kept falling back in the mud. So the animals were killed, the people killed, really hard life. He then married Janet Gordon, and they had Elizabeth and Martin and Joseph. This is where I started to have fun and games with the Martins. He lived in Greyfriars and he died of old age, which then was quite old, 73, in Canada. So any questions, please, you know? Right, so this Martin was his son that we just saw. And we'll get more interested in a minute. I just needed to let you see where all the Martins and our family come in.
Samuel. Yeah.
The one was born in 1762. On his son's death certificate, he said, Father Samuel Arthur, possibly born in Ireland. So, thank you for asking, that was good. Okay, now this one here, Martin Arthur owned 1813 to 1876. This lady, Agnes Hunter, that he married, she'd been previously married, forget that. He married this Agnes Hunter, and through her was also like a huge amount of lines that go back to the peerage. Huge.
Can you hear that?
Sorry?
You were talking about that.
Okay. I told you I knew it. So through Agnes Hunter, and I haven't done her this time because it was too much. Through her is another line where we go right back to the Ogilvies, the Drummonds, all the peerage through Agnes Hunter. So once again, we've got, they had 2 children, Martin, born in 1846, and Mary Jane. And he died in Canongate at 63, so still not bad for those times, really. Now, this is now my great-grandfather, your great-great, or great-great-great, or in the case of the kids, great-great-great-great, 4 greats, okay. So, he was born in 1846, he married, now this is the lady that we've got a huge amount of peerage lines through, Jane Wilson. She's, like, her whole line goes back to nearly all, like Robert the Bruce, William Wallace, James Douglas, the Black Douglas. he was a courier.
Janis, on your meat, tell the boy shut the fuck up.
Sorry, no?
Say shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up. So, they had 5 children, and he was put into prison for wife beating.
You've got mixed up somewhere.
So, he actually died in the Canada poorhouse at 70. You know, that's
Ended up in the poorhouse.
yeah. So this is where it starts to get interesting for our family, and that was the Craigmillar Lockhart poorhouse. Okay.
So you'll not be able to see that, but it's Craig Lockhart Poorhouse. So, yeah. The what, huh? Aye.
So this now is my grandfather, your great Martin Arthur, who died in 1938. And this is where your line is here, which we discussed. No, sorry. I'll touch it to my chin. So Angela is Patch's mum, and Anne English Thompson. There's James and Martin James. So 2 sons named Martin in the same family. 2 of them. And my dad was Robert, and granddad was the bricklayer. And when they went to Australia, he couldn't work because his lungs were rat shit from the war. This here I've just put in because, as I said, I don't know the story. Because Martin, your Patch, your great-grandfather, he was only 5. And as I said, I can't find anything about Angela. I've tried just out of curiosity, but not much.
She ended up in a skip or something. She's
probably 6 foot under somewhere, yeah. So what actually happened, because his dad died in the poorhouse, and I don't know what happened to his mother, I think, she might have shot him. He was put onto the Mars, which was an orphanage. Now, you were either an orphan or a naughty boy. Not a real bad boy, trust me, just a naughty boy. And when at least he got fed and clothed and learned to read and write in the orphanage.
This was Patch.
No, this is Patch's dad. My grandfather, my grandfather, your great-grandfather. Yeah, your grandfather. So he was on the Mars, and I've got here what I've already told you. Because he was damaged in the war, they had to immigrate, but Patch stayed. This was Granddad. When he came off the Mars, he joined the army and went to India with the army as a drummer boy. Like, we're talking only 2 generations from me, and I'm old, but we're still talking, it's not that long ago. And when I show you, that was the Mars. That was the decommissioned hulk that was an orphanage on River Tay, Glasgow. And
it was in the River Tay. It was just on the other side of Dundee. And right up until the 60s, I had a mate in the army who was on that as well. He was, his family deserted him pretty much, him and his brother, and they ended up on that as well. So it was still going in the 60s, this shit up in Dundee, which was a kind of orphanage place.
Yeah, and I mean, you look, my granddad that would have been taken around the time that he was there. And have a look at it. I mean, imagine what it was like. However, they were fed, clothed and educated. So there was a place. That's my grandmother and my grandfather, your great-grandfather in Melbourne. When he was dying, and I'm going to get John to say this because I can't do the Scottish accent, I wouldn't dare. When he was a bit of a lad, my grandmother used to bash the shit out of him. Not really, truly, because he'd go out at night and he wouldn't come home and he'd be womanising and all sorts of things.
So that's more like it.
Yeah. But when he was in hospital dying, and the family were all gathered around, and he always wore tam o' shanter, and apparently had steely blue eyes, really blue eyes. And he pulled the sheet up, and a minister came in, probably to say, do you want to talk about your dying or something? And he said to the minister...
So he looked through the sheet and the tam o' shanter on the minister standing there, and he says, I didn't believe that shite while I was up well. I didn't believe that shite now. I'm dying, so you fuck off.
To the minister. So, the last bit of this, which I won't go into, as I said, if you're really interested, John can send it to you. But the last bit I've already told some of you. My auntie Nettie came over in the 50s to meet her brother Martin Patch that had stayed. And he'd just died, and she was devastated because she didn't get to see him, but she did meet Alexander. So, you know who Alexander is. Alexander's, Martin's, James, we've got them everywhere. So, that was a bit nice, but she really wanted him. So, this is where the family lived in Lady Steve's Close, here, and that's what it would have been like then. This is my daughter, taken a few years ago when we visited. I brought her over, and that's her standing at the door. So, and actually yesterday my son was here for a short while and he's gone up to the golf. I took a photo of him at the door too, so, because it's our history, isn't it? All of us. So there's Patch. This is Patch. This is your great-grandfather, the one that stayed. This is him. And he did military service, and he and his dad were both in the First World War at the same time. He was in his 20s, and my granddad was in his 40s, and they were both injured in the First World War. So, and he died in 1962. So, 52, sorry. And I only met Kay, I think, in 54, and he died. My young cousin, I'm the youngest of the youngest, by the way. Of all those that immigrated, I'm the youngest of the youngest. This boy here, Neville, he's dying at the moment in Melbourne. He's in his 80s and he's dying. And his grandson asked me if I'd put this photo in so you could all see. And that's why it's there. So it's not a great to do with your family history. Because his grandson loved him so much and because he's dying, he said, would you please put the family photo in there? So now this is their father, the other Martin Arthur, who's the brother of Patch. He went blind too. So there you go, he went blind. So this is very quickly, the pretty little girl is my father. This is my dad in Edinburgh. Sorry?
In case you missed it, guys, both our granddad for this side was called Martin and his brother were called Martin. We love the name Martin so much, Martin, we had to just... It's fucking mental, but... So go figure. Aye. That's what I understand. Both of them went blind, yeah.
So I mean, you can see why I got confused, can't you?
Remember there's children and stuff in there. Stop it, you'll go blind. Yeah, that's right. So the whole family's afflicted.
I mean, you can see why it took me so long to get all this together. I mean, it's so confusing. This is my dad, still in Edinburgh, dressed like a bloody girl. That was him, obviously that was my mum and dad just before Dad died. So that was just a bit of info. Okay, this one I've put in because...
Can I just ask, So was it your dad that opened the first bottle shop?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
He
we've
was
got a
from
wee
Melbourne.
relationship with alcohol as well. What happened was in Australia you get a carry out drive-through, so you can buy whiskey from your car. And our dad opened the very first one was in Australia. Yeah. So we should feel proud, guys. We're really proud.
The reason I've put this in is because this family is the one I was able to go the furthest back with. That's why. So, any of you younger ones especially, who might know a bit about history, you know, William the Conqueror came over in 1066.
Nearly studied in this one.
Yeah. So, this man, Miguel de Liston, was from, they were Normans. I mean, you watch enough of Braveheart and all those, you know about the Normans. He was born in France. His son was born in France. But then this John came across in 1087 after William the Conqueror. And they went to Scotland. And here's the line, back right down to us. So they were knights, they were Norman knights, and I've stopped it here because I'll show you how it works later, but I've stopped it here. So this line goes all the way down to that lady I said, Jane Wilson. Remember I said Jane Wilson's got a lot from our family who go back to knights, to royalty and to knights. Okay, so here you go. So Patrick Liston, they dropped the Liston, it became Liston. Actually became Liston. And it went down Robert Wilson, Jane Wilson, Martin Arthur, and so on. So I popped that in just so you can see how far back. Yes, Dave.
That's Alex's middle child's.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And it's nothing to do with the history of our family or anything. It was actually his wife's
Boxing.
granddad's name.
Yeah. Well,
Named after.
well,
Ironically.
for all you know, he could be a descendant of the de Listones.
Well, he was Irish, so I don't know. Unless
But
unless
don't-
you maybe from France, then something should be there.
I would say, Mark, I would say there's a connection because they came over and they went to Scotland and Ireland and maybe not so much England. So I would say there's a connection with the name.
Probably my cousins and stuff like they do. but look what's funny, we get on the way down to Mother Jane Wilson, Father Martin Arthur, wife beater. This is a Me Too generation, guys. Like, we're gonna...
So, just very quickly, one of the Listoons fought the English with 4 sons, and he died, and the 4 sons all died in the battle.
Press and hands.
Press the pans. And they got away for a while. No, sorry, John, that was wrong. You were wrong. This lot.
It's so unusual me being wrong. They'll be shocked.
This lot escaped, and the English tried to find them and couldn't find them. So they lived with the threat of treason on their head till they died, but they were never caught by the English. So just going down the line, it shows that we went from lairds to masons to candle makers. So we sort of lost the plot a bit, somewhere down the track. Mind you, if you're a candle maker now, you'd make a fortune. Absolute fortune. Here's your Stuart line. So James Stuart, 1243 to 1309, is my 22nd great-grandfather. So we're talking the Stuart kings here. So that means they're your 23rd or 24th with the younger ones. And as I said, I've just put an arrow there because I've explained how I've done it. So that was Jane McAlpine. She was another one of the ladies. We can go right back through the marriage line. The marriage line. So here I've just put this in just for interest's sake. Robert was King of Scotland from 1371 till his death, the first monarch of the House of Stuart. His father was Walter Stuart. His mother was Marjorie Bruce, daughter of Bruce. So we are descended from Robert the Bruce as well. Okay? And this is just another line, the Graham line that I've just popped in because, as I said, look, you know, I could have gone on for thousands of years with all this. And these were, he was first Lord Graham, and it goes right through again, through the female line to the Arthurs. He, Lord Graham, became Regent of Scotland when James I was held by the English in captivity. So he, our 20 whatever great grandfather, actually was the Regent of Scotland while James I was imprisoned by the English. This is my favourite line, okay? James Douglas was my 17th great grandfather, okay? You all know who James Douglas was, don't you? Yes? Okay. Who doesn't? Girls, do you know who James Douglas was?
They're quickly Googling it.
You need to know. He was Robert the Bruce's best friend. And he was known as the Black Douglas, and they've actually got a Scotch named after him. The English called him the Black Douglas, the Scots called him the Good St James. When Robert the Bruce died, Robert had said to James, I want you to take my heart to the Holy Land, because the knights were all going off to the bloody Holy Land. They got as far as Andalusia in Spain, and the Moors attacked them, and James was killed. So the knights said, we can't keep going with Robert's heart, so they had to boil James's body, take the bones, take his heart out, take the bones back, because there were no fridges. I mean, we're talking, 1300s. So they took James's bones and heart back, and Robert the Bruce's heart back. And as you know, Robert the Bruce's heart's in Dunfermline. James's heart is in a case in St Bride's Church in Douglas, and his bones are actually in a tomb. So, and originally, in fact, it might go the next one. So there's the full line from James Douglas down to us. That's the full line. Through the marriage line, that I've put that in so you can actually see, right? So what actually happened, because James had taken Robert, or tried to take Robert's heart to the Holy Land and not succeeded, this was the original Douglas shield. But because he tried to take Robert the Bruce's heart to the Holy Land and didn't succeed, after he got back, they put Robert the Bruce's heart on the Douglas shield with the crown on top. And this man is my favourite. I love him. I wish I could have met him. I think one story he did, the English, as you know, had captured Robert the Bruce's family and imprisoned them in England. And they also invaded James's castle and hurt, all his family. And so James actually and his knights became one of the first guerrilla warfares. They were actually one of the first people that fought a guerrilla type warfare against the English. The English were in his castle, Douglas Castle, having a feast, and because James and his family couldn't, because the English had taken over. They locked all the doors, and he actually burned his own castle down with the English in there. He thought, So, and it's called the Douglas Larder. It's actually got a name. It's called the Douglas Larder because he said, I'd rather not have my home than let the English. Think of that when you get to vote for independence. That's his grave. That's me at the grave, bawling my eyes out incidentally, which I rarely do. I was crying my eyes out. So, of the ones I've just shown you, I've summarised it a little bit. So, Dilliston, Samuel, the Grahams, the Douglases and the Stewarts all come down to my granddad. My granddad, your great or great-great-great-granddad. And then you've got my dad, Robert Arthur, and your Patch. There's Patch with 12 children. So that's basically, this is something interesting for any of you who know anything, especially the young ones. You've heard of the Declaration of Independence for America? Yes? 3 of our ancestors signed the Declaration of Arbroath, which the American independence is based on. So all 3 of these are signatories on that very, very valuable special document. That's just my family, my 3 kids. Let me go back. She looks a bit like, yeah? So that's Scott, Linda and Brett. Marcus has met Linda. A few Martin's met Linda. Yeah. We put this in, my friend put this in, because Linda's won Australian titles dancing, I've won Australian titles dancing, and we just put it in to show it because I know a lot of the kids are doing Highland dancing here and winning. That's my auntie Nettie in Scotland, and all those medals are for her winning Highland dancing. So all I'm saying is, it's in the genes. Things are in the genes, very much. I mean, I know James' little granddaughters are doing, aren't they, James? Your granddaughters are doing Highland dancing, and I think a couple others. Yeah, a couple of others. Yeah. So, it's in the genes to do well at dancing, but it's also in the genes with boxing. There's Alex, obviously. My granddad was the bare knuckle champion of Edinburgh before the war. And they towed the line, remember? They towed the line when they fought. And he was Edinburgh champion, bare knuckle fighter. And my dad, his trophies for boxing.
Say that again, couldn't hear it.
Sorry?
Couldn't hear you.
That's my dad with his trophies for boxing.
And dancing.
And dancing, but most of it's boxing. And then the guy holding the woman up is Janis Arthur. That's Janis Arthur, another one. Yep. He won Australian-born championship year after year with his wife, but he worked out 3 nights a week in a gym boxing to keep light on his feet. So I'm just showing you this to say that a lot of stuff's in our DNA and our genes, a lot of it. So that's my family with my mum before she went, that's my granddaughter who's 17. This is my granddaughter who's now 14 months. And she's John's, same age as John's granddaughter Zach. Same age. This is now, here we go. James Arthur, Anne Arthur, Janet Arthur, Robert Arthur, Martin Arthur. They're my uncles. That's my dad, but the others are my uncles and aunties. This was taken in Edinburgh before, long before they immigrated. And this is them grown up. So you've got James, Anne, Janet, Martin and Robert. So that's the story, from Normans to Scottish kings and champion athletes and dancers. There are other stories that I've had to leave out because we fought and many died at the major battles like Culloden, Bannockburn, then Shield, Stirling Bridge, all of those. And I've got all the information, the names and dates and everything, but where do you stop? This was really just to give you an idea of our family history and how we ended up on the other side of the world. So that's all. So, has anybody got any questions or not? Have you been bored shitless or what? Huh? I mean, anything you want to know, just ask John, because he can send you this for a start. But if there's anything else you want to know, like where I said, you know, we don't have Colombia and Babylon and all that, I've got it all.
I've got a question. So Susan's got a question, I've got a question. My question is, I thought you said you were nervous.
Yeah, Mum and Arthur, I've got over that. Once it gets done.
Wait, no, Susan, then Martin.
Sorry, see?
How long did it take you to do that? Do all this?
The research, years. But I've got a friend of mine who, actually John knows, she put this, I told her what I wanted and she put that together. But the research has taken me years and years and years and years. And I've got 15 albums this wide at home, and I had to stop printing things out because I thought I'm going to cark it, and my kids are going to throw them out anyway. But I just thought, you know, it might be interesting for you to see how we're connected. You know, brothers, two brothers with the same name. Granddad had to leave, one stayed. And then a bit about the family history, but there's so much you wouldn't believe. You would be absolutely blown away.
That's been really brilliant. What about a round of applause for that, guys? That's amazing piece of work. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Can I just say one more thing? Just one small thing, and this is at the young ones. Girls, all the young ones, please, listen. I'm really serious about this. The older ones here would have heard of the book Roots and the mini-series Roots, yes? Remember? Alex Haley. At the end of the book and at the end of the mini-series, he found his African family from 1700 when he was, the old guy was captured as a slave and taken to America. He found his family. He went back to Africa and he's found his family. And he says at the end of his book, and he says at the end of the mini-series, to the young ones, to all of you young ones, no, listen, seriously, if you don't remember this and keep this, it's lost forever. It's gone. It's gone. So remember your heritage. Remember your strong heritage, okay? That's a request.
So Martin, you were going to ask something? You might go blind, but you've got a really strong right arm. Like a fiddler crowd. Janis, Linda. What about the rest of the family? To Australia, settled in Australia. Yeah. But it was pretty, I'm just thinking, they must have had good springs on the bed because they had, what, 12 parents? It was pretty fecund. So yeah, any questions? Janis is here all night, she's here. I was sitting at your breakfast bar, wasn't I? And she brought out all the books, and I went, I can't read that much. But we had such a laugh trying to put everything together. Lorna's been a massive help, and the guys at Alec. So it's been a brilliant journey. We're going to continue with the night, guys. We're just going to get some music on and stuff like that. Can I just ask who completed the quiz, the Arthur quiz? Anybody get it finished? Or I can't remember what the fucking questions were. Anybody? So let's just get that out of the way now. Are we ready? So, who reportedly kept a horse in a neighbour's house? Old Alec. Yeah, you get that. Give yourself a... Aye. Whose house was it?
His neighbours.
The house that kept Mrs. Steedman. Old Steedman. Aye. Underneath.
The horse.
Aye.
It says whose house, it's the neighbour's house.
Aye. Good. Yeah. Go for it. The horse's name was Bess, I think. I'm not sure.
Our parents slept in the cupboard and the horse slept in the bedroom.
Okay, so, and that was in Nidremain's Terrace, wasn't it? That was 103. Aye. Okay, so who served the longest in jail?
Uncle Jimmy.
No.
Yes.
I ran out of space in the paper.
There was so many of them, aye. So it was James, it was Uncle James. And the other question, was he guilty of the crime?
No.
No, was he hell?
Lucy was there.
He did a long sentence,
It was the police sergeant made up an excuse.
Yes, that's it, the pin the blood on him.
And I think he escaped a few. He actually did, I think he escaped a prison or two, did he not?
He might well have done. Okay, which brother and sister married a brother and sister?
No, but that's a No.
Alec and Vi.
Alan and Vi married Jimmy.
Betty. You forgot your man's name there, Alec. Okay, next one, guys. Which two cousins worked in printer bookbinders together? Sandra and Isa, that's right, Sandra and Isa, that's right. Who worked in the removals together? Your two cousins? Alec and John, that's right, yeah. And who worked in... Wally and who? Danny. Right, this is the next one that we didn't know. Which child? And we're talking about the line, we're not talking about the... so it could be an Arthur, it could be an Eyre, it could be a Macclellan, it could be a Borthwick, it could be blah blah.
That's a trick question.
That's still the line, that's what you see, the lines going back to the kings.
Actually, the one went through and it's factual that I've got the correct answer.
What is it?
It's the one who was born most recently.
He's so fucking literal, isn't he? No. So, Olivia, Alan's granddaughter. What age is she, Alan? 4 months old. Anyone more than that or less than that? No? Okay, well done. Which two Arthurs had children to two Reetsons? I bet that quite a few years. Annie and James, right, yeah, good one. Okay, of Martin and Alice's daughters, whose husband did the following for a living at one point? Drove a steamroller. So whose husband drove a steamroller?
I hope it was the Martin's husband.
It was John and Linda's dad. It was Auntie Margaret and Uncle Joe. Right, who drove a coal lorry? Uncle Alec did as well. I was thought that was, I wasn't who I was thinking about. Because he's actually an Arthur, not married to one. It was Jim Macclellan, drove for the NCB. Aye, Uncle Alec did. But he wasn't married to any sisters, but we'll let that one slide. Who drove a bus for many years? Uncle Peter, that's right, yeah. Married to Jean Smith. Jean Arthur, of course. Okay, who worked as an electrician? No, but I mean, one that's qualified. So that was Jenny. That was Uncle Henry. Who, yeah. Okay, brewery worker. Dad. What's his name, Brenda? Jimmy, Uncle Jimmy. We had three. We had James, and the way we distinguished them was Uncle Jimmy was Jimmy Eyre, James was Janis Arthur, and what was the other one? Uncle Jim, Macklin. Yeah. Okay, and construction? Annie's man, John, when he worked there. He had a lot of holidays, aye. Some of them at Her Majesty's pleasure, the rest with his mother along at 18 Hay Drive. Okay, so. Okay, which of Martin and Alice's sons or daughters had the most children? Vi. How many? 8. 13. Okay, so it was Vi. So, how many boys, how many girls? 4. Okay. Where about in Australia does cousin Janis stay?
Gold Coast.
Isn't it? Can you narrow it down a wee bit? Australia, narrower. Surfer's Paradise. So, when I first contacted Janis, I was in America going to go over to Australia, so we got talking, and I says to her, I says, so where do you stay? She says, Surfer's Paradise. And I says, that's a bit fucking up itself, is it not? Okay, so listen guys. When we seen that some of our granddads and great-granddads and stuff like that lived to 73, okay, that or 71, that's a long time. I worked in this area about 5-6 years ago, and I came across a document by Lothian Health Board that says the average life expectancy for a man in Craigmillar at that time, 5 years ago, was 62. 62. There's none of our family sitting here today that hasn't lost brothers or sisters at a very young age. So it's a really important thing that we collect this information. Some of our aunties died really young, some of our family died way too young. But we're here tonight to celebrate the fact that we're still here. We're on this side of the turf. You know what I mean? So, brilliant to see you, and we thought we would just try this and see if it would work. And Janis, I think, did a brilliant job. There's a list up there. If you want to put your name, I can email the presentation to you, and if you want more, I'll put Janis's stuff down. I am filming it. If you want to come up and tell a story about your favourite Arthur story or what, and I've got one, and I'm going to start it. And is he still here? Oh, right. I see Martin screwing up his face. Okay. So, let's tell you what happened, right? I'd been in the army for about 3 years, and I came home, and I had a predilection for alcohol and some other substances. And I was up the tune, and the pub shut at 10 o'clock at that time, didn't it? And well, I was coming along Clark Street, and I was skint, so I was going to have to walk home, but I needed more alcohol. But anyway, so who does I bump into? But Robert and Martin. And they'd been doing a wee bit of work at that point, and they were pretty loaded. So they bumped into me, where are you going? Because I said, I need to go home. He says, you want to go for a pint? I says, the pubs are shut. He says, well, if we go in and get a meal, we can get drink with it. And they were flush, the guys had money, like. So we went into a Chinese restaurant, and at that time, there was always this thing. Do you remember, if you try and give the Chinese money, they'll come after you with meat cleaver. And remember, that was it was an urban myth, but it could be true. So we went in and we were having a meal. We weren't really interested in the food, but we had to buy it in order to get the berry. So we're berrying away, and I goes to the box at the back of the shop, at the back of the restaurant. I've come out, and they two bastards are standing at the door going like that. Nash, I've been a greedy basket, so I've eaten the chow mein and that, and been drinking the beer, and been drinking earlier, and I went on. I could imagine these guys chasing us with cleaver. So I've gnashed out into Clark Street. They've gnashed up with East Preston Street, and I'm trying to run after them. And my wee belly's kind of thing. And I've got round the corner, and him and Rab are lying against the hedge, pissing themselves. Look at me that. We paid for it, you daft bastard. So guys, if you've got any stories, anything, the other thing that we were thinking about is if we gave the sing song, the lassies have been brilliant in helping tonight, Tasha, and what we're going to try and do, Megan, as well, is if you've got a favourite song that your mum, your dad used to sing, or anything like that, come up and do a wee turn, have a laugh. I've never heard my brother Alan sing. I hear he's a really good singer. I heard he's no bad. Singing hymns. Oh, yeah. Amazing Grace. So listen guys, that's the kind of formal part over with, and just, he's already started just mixing and matching and stuff like that, and then boxing over here. We're getting into that. So listen, thanks so much, Janis, for doing all that. That was brilliant. Thank you, guys. You want to tell the story about what young Alex is? The taxi to the hotel.
When I first found the family, which is quite a few years ago, and Corinne knows this and Alex knows this, I'd been looking as I told you earlier, and my friend at work found a picture of Alex, young Alex, the boxer, and she said, do you think this could possibly be a relative? I said, if he's fighting, it has to be a relative. Trust me, it has to be. So I sort of ended up finding my cousins, which has been one of the best things in my life. I don't kid you not. It really has been amazing for me to find you all. That way, I got in touch and came back, and this is it. This is where it ended up. So it was. So I came home. Actually, when we drove up from Yorkshire, my son was driving, and Holly was in the front, the baby in the back. We passed the Scottish sign. I said, I'm home. And Brent turned around and said, for fuck's sake, Mum. Actually, I've got a little story to tell you. It's a bit boring, but this is my dad, as John said, had pubs and bottle shops, bottle shop. And my Uncle Jim came over. He was a naughty boy, my Uncle Jim. And he came over for a weekend and stayed 6 months. And when he was going back, one of the people that drank in the bar said to Dad, Robert, I need to tell you, Jim has filled his suitcase with scotch. He was taking a whole suitcase of scotch back to Melbourne. So Dad snuck into his room, took out the scotch, put in bricks, and Uncle Jim paid excess baggage on a bag full of bricks, and nothing was ever said. Nobody ever mentioned again, not Dad, who was Robert Arthur. Uncle Jim didn't say, you bastard, you feel Robert. Dad didn't say, you're a pitchy marble grog. So, but I have to all tell you too, the fighting in the pubs with the Arthurs down there was huge. My granddad spent so many nights in jail for fighting in the pubs. And he was a sick man. He was actually a sick man.
So, anybody else for a new story? Anybody for a new story? Maybe later when we get the bed.
Oh, I have to tell about the taxi driver.
Yeah. So forgot the taxi driver story here.
So when I was here last time, I was going actually to young Alex's house to meet Frankie, remember we were going out for dinner and I had to get a cab. I'm in the cab and I gave the cab driver the address. And he said, that's Alex Arthur's address. I said, yes. He said, you're not an Arthur, are you? And I said, yes. He said, we'll have to double the police. True story. But it turns out he was actually a friend. He actually knew Alex. So he went to school with you, he said. So it was a bit of a joke. But he said, oh, we'll have to double the police. I went, okay.
So get some music.
Believe was just up. I went, what? He went, walked through the bar and the dog. Did you see the dog? Did you live here? And he says, I spoke here, and he spoke to the guy for a couple of seconds because the dog was shut in the door. He went, hi. He says, I said, he went, he sees my nurse, he's going, I haven't got that. It was Andy. What was the chance? What was the chances of that? What's the chances of that? Well, it's one of them.